You get really excited and then you realise you've spent your savings for your home. It's all about you building up the confidence within yourself and your belief in your ability to get there.
This series is brought to you by L&G, helping you build a future that's a little bit richer.
Hello and welcome to A Little Bit Richer with me, Iona Bain, brought to you by Legal & General. In today's episode, we're talking about something that affects millions of people, but often doesn't get discussed enough in the context of money, and that's neurodiversity. Around 1 in 5 people in the UK are neurodivergent, which means their brains work a little differently from what's considered typical. Neurodiversity is a term that covers ADHD, autism, dyslexia, and dyscalculia. And for many, it shapes how we think, feel, and behave when it comes to finances. Research shows neurodivergent people are more likely to face financial anxiety and often lack confidence when it comes to managing their money. Joining me today is the brilliant Krystle McGilvery. She's an accountant, campaigner, and speaker who was diagnosed with dyslexia in her 30s and also lives with ADHD. Krystle has a master's in behavioural and economic science and is an expert in decision-making and behavioural finance. So she is the perfect person for us to chat to today. Welcome, Krystle.
Hi.
Can you explain more about neurodiversity and how this might affect how someone manages their money?
Neurodiversity basically is a difference in our brain. Neurodivergents have a different maybe structure in the brain, or the way their brain reacts or operates is slightly different. If you are neurodivergent, you are likely to be different in how you think, feel and act. And if you kind of think about money and the role it plays in our lives, it then has a kind of double rolling effect on that.
So it's a very profound impact on pretty much every aspect of how you interact with your finances.
100%, yeah. We're talking about managing and budgeting, etc. And if you don't have systems in place to help you build wealth and manage your money on a day-to-day, it can be really quite hard.
What are some of the typical money-related challenges that neurodiverse people face? How might these differ between ADHD, autism, dyslexia and dyscalculia?
So kind of top line, we're talking about things such as emotional dysregulation or executive functioning. This is where it impacts us. And what we're saying here is, for example, executive functioning, we're talking about planning and organising our finances. And what you might see is someone struggling with budgeting. So literally putting together a budget and staying within the parameters that they've set for their finances. And maybe they impulse spend instead. That's when we kind of go back to things such as emotional dysregulation. But when you're maybe sad or even really happy, you want to reward yourself. And that spike, you get really excited. And then you realise you've spent your savings for your home. Or if we think about something like autism, maybe shutdowns or meltdowns means you avoid your finances completely, and then that can cause a ripple effect.
And also when it comes to something like dyslexia or dyscalculia, can that also be problematic in terms of your finances?
Yeah, for sure. So if we think about dyscalculia, that's all about numbers. So that's straight in there when it comes to finance. Yeah. Although I like to talk about finances not being a mathematical thing as such, right? It's more about the managing, the planning, thinking about the future, investing for later life. But if you've got a fear or, you avoid numbers, that just writes it off completely and really makes it hard for you to start thinking about what you're doing with your money for later in life or even today. And then writing or doing any kind of financial management when it comes to your money, dyslexia shows up.
And you've been very open about your diagnosis of ADHD and dyslexia. How have those things specifically affected your ability to manage money?
Yeah, so I'm an accountant, right? And
which some people might be surprised by.
100%, which is why I laugh, because I think I announced it basically on LinkedIn a good few years ago, and everybody was really surprised that I'm a chartered accountant. I've got a bachelor's in financial mathematics. I'm very number heavy. But I think what we need to understand here is neurodivergence is on a spectrum. And the way it's diagnosed is there's a range of traits. And when you're assessed, it's about you being diagnosed based on you meeting a criteria of having a certain number of traits in a certain area. So with me being dyslexic, for example, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to struggle with numbers. My dyslexia actually is around auditory. So I can still really thrive when it comes to numbers, and I'm not, I don't avoid them. But where I do struggle, and I've had to build systems, which is what I really kind of talk about, is the managing and planning. So, for example, when I worked in an organisation, I had the structure. I'm in finance. It's important that I have structure, right? I have weekly deadlines, monthly deadlines. So I was really okay kind of functioning in that environment. As soon as I've gone and worked for myself now, it's a whole straight away I was like, how do I do this?
I mean, when you're self-employed, that is hard at the best of times, but
exactly.
it must have been particularly tricky for you.
It was. And just back to your question, I hadn't been diagnosed then, but I did notice straight away that I was really messy in my organisation and what I was doing. And I was just I felt really all over the place. And it took a while for me to realise I need structure. So that's one thing I help people with, is building that routine, that system, because that's going to be your foundation for you to then kind of launch pad and do the other things you need to do.
What you're saying really resonates with me, because I was diagnosed with dyscalculia when I was at school. And one thing that frustrates me now is if I tell people what I do, they say, well, and if I then talk about my struggles with numbers and maths, they then say, well, how can you then be good with money? Do you get this sometimes where people will perhaps write off those who have neurodivergence as maybe not being able to get on top of their finances, and maybe, that they'll always have these struggles and they'll always have these difficulties? Is that something that you find frustrating?
Yeah, 100%. Whether it's, people in general or the individual themselves, them knowing that they are neurodivergent and the struggles they've had in the past can be so really quite hard to manage. And that can demotivate you to even start walking the path to addressing where you are different.
Because you've already started labelling yourself in that way.
Exactly. When it comes to neurodivergence, it's not that there's a problem with your brain. It's actually the systems and products and services that exist in our society today have not been made tailored for you. And instead, what you need to do is kind of identify, okay, how does my brain work? What do I find really easy? And then what systems can I put in place to help me win when it comes to finance?
Many people who have neurodivergence talk about the frustration of having that intention to manage their money better, but not being able to follow through. So what's behind that, actually? And how can we be kinder to ourselves in those moments?
Yeah, 100%. The word lazy comes up a lot, or people label people as lazy. And so when it comes to your finances, you might have all the best interest in the world to say, right, I'm going to do this, and feel quite motivated about it. When it comes to our brain and, things such as dopamine and distraction and, struggling to control yourself, that's down to your brain and the way it's wired. So it's not that you're lazy and you just give up. There's actually something going on in your mind, and that's where it's really important to put systems in place and, tools that can help you get things done.
And therefore, how do we become kinder to ourselves about these difficulties if we are neurodivergent and we have had those struggles with money?
I talk about financial empathy a lot.
So that's the number one thing before you even get into strategies is be kind to yourself.
Oh, yeah. So I've got like a coaching program, and I take people through, and before we even start talking numbers, it's all about you building up the confidence within yourself and your belief in your ability to get there. Because if you're coming in and feeling quite trodden on and just, you've lost some money, or you're not where your friends are, you just don't feel good. So you're not going to be in the right space to be like, okay, yeah, let's put a budget in place. Yep, let's start saving. Because you're going to have this negative thought cycle. And instead it's realizing there's nothing wrong with your brain. Absolutely not. It's just we haven't quite discovered what works for you. And, the way I talk about this is going through that journey, then you're able and open to reframe your view of you and money, and then let's get some things in place, and then it becomes really exciting because it's almost like you're problem solving and trying to figure out, this works for me and I can make it fun here.
It's about trying to get those aha moments where suddenly people will understand how to view their neurodivergence in a new light almost, and see it as an opportunity and something that they can work with.
Precisely. And it's exactly an aha moment because, it's a reframe. That's what it is. And then it allows you to go down this different path when it comes to your finances and see that actually, oh, maybe I could buy a home one day, or maybe I could build up an emergency fund, or maybe I could start investing. That becomes accessible to you.
That's lovely, kind of opening up those possibilities.
Precisely.
So let's talk about some practical ways that neurodiverse people can manage their spending day to day, because that must be a big challenge. Making sure that you can deal with impulse spending, emotional purchases, forgetfulness, those types of day-to-day challenges. What do you recommend in terms of practical strategies?
Yeah. So one thing that I know people love are certain banking apps that maybe alert you when you've spent some money. I think it's a really great reminder because it's so easy for us to forget about money.
Yeah.
You know, money is now a card. It's a bit of plastic in your hand. And you know, when we think about the science and what's happening there, I don't know if you kind of heard, but when you spend with cash compared to spending with a card, the part of our brain that's associated with pain lights up more so when we spend with money. So spending with, it's really quite fascinating.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's really fascinating.
Because intuitively, I do feel more pained when I have to hand over a tenner compared to when I just tap my card.
Yeah, because there's a disassociation, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to think about what's actually going on there. It's just like, oh, this thing allows me to get that thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, a banking app, for example, that pings when money has come in or gone out is such a great reminder to bring you back to, okay, think about my budget or what am I doing here? Things such as having different pots or different bank accounts even. So what I like to encourage is you have a bank account or a pot that is purely for your bills.
So a pot is a, just explain how that works.
Yeah, for example, Monzo. I think Starling as well, you can set up your bank account and separate your money into different sections within the one bank account, which is really quite cool. But that allows you to then separate your income, for example, into those pots and then allocate bills to those different areas. And what that means is you don't have to worry about overspending and not being able to pay a bill and then having to borrow in maybe unsavoury circumstances to be able to cover your day-to-day. And then you've got this other pot, which is maybe for the fun stuff, and you can be free and allow your impulsive, desires to have fun.
Yes. So it's not about removing all the fun. It's just about putting the boundaries in place.
Yes.
And also when it comes to paying bills, can organising those via a direct debit help as well?
Yeah, 100%. I shout about automation. So where you can set up direct debits, exactly, whether it's from the bill paying account, that works wonders. And even if it's not a bill and it's investing or saving, standing order that, set it up where the money just comes out of your account and you're not thinking about it.
One of the things that's really helped me as someone who doesn't intuitively connect with numbers is using visual tools.
Yes.
So I love seeing my spending in a pie chart or a bar chart because then I can see, rather than have to calculate how much money I have left per month.
If it works for you and it helps you kind of focus on the right thing, then run with it.
Absolutely.
As long as we're getting to the end goal, right?
Totally. And what would your advice be for anyone who may be feeling shame and embarrassment around not feeling like they are adulting and getting their act together when it comes to money? How can we shift that mindset?
Yeah. And it's a really good question. I think a lot of the people who speak about their struggles with money say, I want to be adult about money. And we're talking about people who are 30, 40, 50 years old. I think it's initially acknowledging and understanding that your brain works differently and there's nothing wrong with that. And actually, what hasn't adjusted are the financial products and services that exist to kind of align with how your brain works. And it just requires an extra step for you to find solutions that work well for you. And there are many people who have successfully done that and gone from, really difficult financial situations and struggling in debt and not having oversight of their finances and have gone through that. And it might involve an initial kind of brave step of rolling up your sleeves and being like, okay, let's go for it. But just encouragement that there is a way and you can go down that path.
If spending becomes an issue because of your neurodivergence, do you recommend certain strategies to put in place to manage debt that might happen as a result of that?
First of all, I'd say it's kind of stop, pause, breathe, and know that you can get through. And I think second, it's take an audit. Note down, okay, this is what I have here, these are the terms and conditions here, and then it's slowly working your way through various different methods. I don't know if you've come across kind of avalanche and snowball method, different ways of tackling your debts, and it can be quite fun actually as you watch that journey of your debt reducing and know that you have done that. And that's, I guess, linking back to the dopamine we just spoke about.
Once you're on that journey, the progress that you make then becomes very self-motivating.
100%.
But you have to start that journey in the
You
first
have to
place.
start, yeah. And, you know, here, I guess I'd love to reassure that, you know, even starting with £5, and because what we're doing there is we're building this new habit. And that's the key. You are teaching yourself and learning and building up the confidence that I can commit to paying money to clear a debt that I have. That's you being responsible. And once you start that journey, it starts to snowball and you feel really good.
That's so encouraging and heartening. There may be people who are listening to this conversation who haven't got a diagnosis, who think, I relate to a lot of this stuff. What advice would you give to anyone who might be in that position, who may not officially have that neurodivergence, but relate to a lot of what we've been talking about?
I encourage people to set up maybe an accountability partner or someone they can confide in and have those conversations, because it's definitely going to be a journey for you to figure out what works for you.
And does that have to be somebody who is a step removed from your life, like a coach, or can it just be someone who's a friend or a family member who looks out for you?
100%. Totally. My first thought was it could be a friend,
Yeah.
it could be a sister, it could be anyone, but someone that you feel safe to explore that with. Diagnosis is quite expensive and for many people really not accessible. So, but there's no harm in you exploring what solutions exist in that space to help benefit you and help you do better.
And how can partners, friends, even employers be more supportive of those who have neurodivergence when it comes to money?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, it's knowing that neurodivergence is a spectrum, right? And everybody is different. I think, you know, we spoke about it earlier. People assume that someone who is autistic looks a certain way. I mean, I think the narrative of it being a white male is still quite prevalent, right? Dyslexia, ADHD looks different for everybody. And it's for us all to accept that and trust the individual and their challenges. And then also lead with financial empathy and kindness for that person and be gentle with their challenges and support them. And then if you have the time, offer to help. So that might be, you know, helping them find solutions to manage their money better, or helping them find an app that would work well with them. So being a helpful hand.
And Krystle, do you have any advice about how you can keep an eye on the long term? Because that can also be an issue if you're neurodivergent.
There's something called time blindness. So this is where you struggle to kind of think about the future. And paired with that lovely is present bias. So like we spoke about impulsivity, right? And we want to do things right now. But that means two things. One, if we're spending too much right now, we're not able to save and put that money today into the right place, whether it's saving or investing, which is for us to build our future wealth.
And also, I imagine that people who might struggle with things like ADHD would find the process of getting to understand investing in pensions and these big money subjects quite daunting.
Yeah.
So what would your advice be for anyone who would really love to get to grips with these things but thinks, I think that's a little bit beyond me?
Yeah. Again, two things, whether it's talking to somebody that you trust and knows a bit more than you, seeking professional help, you know. But I do understand that, especially if we're talking about a financial advisor who looks really suited and booted and serious when it comes to money, that's a bit scary.
So Krystle, if someone's feeling overwhelmed and they recognise some of the traits that we've been discussing in themselves, what are your top 3 tips for them?
Of course, be kind to yourself. Know that, like with so many other areas of life, it's a journey. And the fact that you are aware of it is the first step. And then it's a matter of, you know, taking your time to gather in the information that you need and working through the process of making the changes. But be kind to yourself. Number 2, I think, would be when we think about the task of doing money, and, sitting down, whether it's with a spreadsheet or a bit of paper, I'd encourage you to maybe anchor that to something that you already enjoy. If you're going to kind of update your budget, find something you can do, or be in a space or an environment that you really enjoy so that it feels good, because you don't have to feel bad when you're doing your finances.
I would blast out some music.
There you go.
That's what I would do.
Exactly. Or maybe go to a cafe and have a little posh coffee. And
Oh, yes, I like that.
right?
Maybe a cake. Maybe
Maybe a blueberry tart is my thing right now.
Now, you're making me really hungry.
I'm sorry.
Third tip.
Third tip would be, I think this leans well into the overwhelm side of money. So chunking it down. So when we think about our finances, there are so many things we need to do, right? Whether it's, creating a budget, setting up our automations, thinking about investing, all of the things. Maybe create a lovely long list and be like, okay, these are the things that I have to do. Choose one and do that one. And then when you come back maybe the next week or a couple of days later, do one other, and just take your time. And before you know it, you've gone through the list. There's no rule that says you have to do it all at once.
Those are fantastic tips, Krystle, and I'm sure people listening will really, really appreciate them. Thank you so much.
That's okay. Thank you.
Next time, the mortgage mum, Sarah Tucker, will be here to talk us through the home buying process and what you need to know. This podcast is brought to you by L&G. You can keep up with the show on YouTube, TikTok and Instagram at Legal and General. I'd absolutely love it if you could follow the podcast, leave us a review and help others get a little bit richer too. Until next time, thanks for listening and see you soon.